Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Speak Your Mind with Larry Cox. It's great to have each and every one of you here tonight on the show. And why don't we do what I ask you to do every week? Let's let's share this show. We're going to have a special guest on here tonight. I'm getting ready to bring him on here and introduce him. And we're going to talk about taxes and the Board of Education and all kinds of different special things tonight. So without further ado, let me welcome you guys, founder of the Eye of the Taxpayer in here in Rockdale County, Mr. George Kelichek. George, how are you doing this evening?
Fantastic, Larry. Fantastic, sir. Had a great day and getting a lot of projects finished. So I appreciate you taking the opportunity to have me come on and provide some very good information regarding our taxes and HB 581.
Cool. Well, we've got some people that have joined us. I want to do what I usually do and tell them howdy. So I turned on our chat here, and let me go ahead and go over here and say hello to the good folks who have joined us tonight. We have Mary Boysworth. Welcome to the show. We have Cheryl Moulton. We have Angela Asprino. Welcome to the show. Charlotte Gellert. Welcome to the show. William Campbell. Thanks for joining us. Future fellow board member Justin Kinney, how are you doing tonight? Miss Danielle Munoz, educator extraordinaire from the great state of Minnesota now, but formerly of Georgia. Great to have you on the show tonight, Danielle. And Luca Russo. Miss Russo, great to have you on the show as usual. One of our regulars that comes in and watches every week. It's great to have you here tonight. And, can't say enough that I really appreciate our audience. I appreciate the consistency that our audience has watching the show. And George, you're one of those guys who, if you weren't on the screen tonight, you would be over there in the chat. So Marie Withers joined us tonight. Hey, Marie, great for joining us. So George, why don't you start it off a little bit? What do you have for us tonight? What would you like to discuss on Speak Your Mind tonight?
Well, I'd like to. I want to address the newspaper article regarding some comments that Superintendent Oates made, and then also get into some talking points that I have provided to the board over the last couple of meetings. And I just would like to give a shout out to everybody, whomever would certainly like to speak on the January the 9th meeting at 6 p.m. or the 16th. I will certainly provide them a nice Eye of the Taxpayer Association visor for speaking in regards to HB 581, because it affects all of us. And then also, if you don't want to speak or you feel like you would like your comments to be provided to the board, you can provide me your 3 minutes when they would call your name up to the podium, and just say that you would relinquish your time to me, and I will certainly present it, because some people are more comfortable presenting and some are not. But we would like to have everybody's voices heard, no doubt.
So George, the article in the Rockdale Citizen, which was on the front page, top fold, very high profile article regarding the superintendent. I've got the newspaper in my hands right here right now. Yeah. And it read, Rockdale School Superintendent requests extension of severance. So let me go ahead and just throw it up here to the fine folks. That's it right there, right, George?
Yes, sir.
That would be the article in question that you intend to reference, correct? So
yes, sir.
So the folks see I'm holding this up so that they know this is an actual article that appeared in the Rockdale Citizen, and you're going to discuss this article. Okay, George, let's go for it.
All right, I'm going to go to page 5 on the right-hand side, and it says, he also cited concerns about the newly elected school board member, Larry Cox, coming on board in January. And then it says, I invoke the constant invective by board member elect Larry Cox, threatening to terminate me without cause, Oates wrote. My question would be, Larry, I don't know that you had said any of those things since you have been elected. And so I would say that this article or this information is out of context.
I want to say Alex asked, did they credit the original article? No, they did not credit the original article, because the original article was actually Mr. Alex McDonald did the original article on his This Week from Rockdale page, where he actually did a 3-part series and over the last week and a half, and broke that story, I believe, through some open records requests that were asked. And Alex here broke that story, and the reason that the Citizen was aware of such a story was because of the good reporting that Alex McDonald did over the last week and a half on that issue. George, do you want me to address that?
Well, first of all, my dad always told me to surround people that were smarter than me. I'd spend less time and less money being more successful. So I appreciate folks being in the top 1/3 of the class that provided me the opportunity to be in the bottom 2/3. So I had to look up invoke, and it means to cite or appeal to someone or something as an authority for an action or in support of an argument. So then the invective, insulting, abusive, highly critical. I just think you presented some true facts, and if he feels as though it's threatening or highly critical or abusive, I don't know. I kind of take reference to that a little bit. So I'll let you speak.
Well, I got the article right here in hand, man. I'm gonna open it up real quick and reference exactly, since my name was mentioned, right? So
Yeah.
I will look and see.
It's on the.
I see it. I'm going here. He also cited concerns about newly elected school board member Larry Cox coming on the board in January. I invoke the constant invective of board member elect Larry Cox threatening to terminate me without cause. So many of you guys have watched the show for years, and I've discussed the superintendent and the Board of Education and a direction that I think the board should go. And specifically, I had mentioned in the past a direction I thought the board should go with the superintendent's position, right? So, as a podcast host and as a candidate, I will not deny that on several occasions I did mention how I would prefer the board would handle the superintendent's employment. And I actually, as a candidate and as a podcast host, mentioned my desires, right? But since the day that I have been candidate elect, I have not one time in public mentioned my desires or any indication of what I would do as a board member once I take that seat. So when it says board, the constant, insulting, and that's what that means, that invective word, insulting, right, or threatening. As a board member elect, I have not said anything about the superintendent of Rockdale County's job status, and I go on the record with that, right? And that's fact. But as a podcast host previously, and as a candidate, I did say things which were protected by my First Amendment rights, George. as a political candidate, you have probably some of the strongest First Amendment rights of any class of citizen in the United States when you're actually running for office. The broad leadway that the Supreme Court has ruled that political candidates have with Supreme Court, I mean, with free speech by the Supreme Court is, it's there, and the precedent is there, and the case law is there. And as acting on in my position as a podcaster, I definitely have those First Amendment rights to say things that I want. And as a podcaster, one might also add, I'm also in the entertainment industry or business also. So we do sensationalize sometimes when we're doing these podcasts, and that's for the sake of maintaining audience or revving the audience up to maintain viewership, right? So I do not deny that this is three different hats. This is candidate-elect Larry Cox. This is board member-elect Larry Cox, candidate Larry Cox, and podcaster Larry Cox, which he did not mention the two individuals, the two entities or things I represented that did say things. He invoked the one thing that I am that I have never said anything regarding employment status. And I hope I answered that question to that people understand what I was saying.
Correct. And I would just like to preface to say, I certainly have no issues or anything with anybody on the school board or any employees or anything like that. So I would like to reference that out on the podcast. I do have questions, and I think as a taxpayer in Rockdale County and for the state of Georgia and for the United States, I have some questions here. So just to preface this, to let you know that I did meet with the CFO and the strategic planning director a couple of weeks ago and voice some of these items that I've brought to the forefront of the citizens and the board over the last couple of board meetings. And so what I'd like to start out with is, I always like to start out with a little quote. And December 1st of 1862, Abraham Lincoln, and I think it's appropriate here, he quoted, "The dogmas of the quiet past are inadequate to the stormy present. The occasion is piled high with difficulty, and we must rise with the occasion as citizens. As our case is new, we must think anew and act anew. We must destroy ourselves, and then we shall save our country." And I think that's what we're looking at here, Larry, is, I've gone to Board of Education meetings over the years, and there's never been any really questioning of these budgets. And, when I start to look at budgets, and certainly I was in the business world like you are, I still am, and still are you. But when we have a budget in 2019 of $163 million, and now there's been a budget approved for $221 million, that's a $58 million increase, or 27% over that time period. But then our student count has been reduced by 1,068 students, or 7%. But with this cost, when we look at the budget versus the number of students, our cost per student has gone from $9,747 to now $14,105. I would conclude that the board needs to take a close look at these types of numbers that we're presenting here this evening and ask, as my 4-year-old grandson says, "Pap, why? Why is this happening?" And that's why we need citizens to speak up. I mean, my Social Security, over the last 6 years has only risen on a net basis 23%. But if you're paying city tax, county tax, and school tax, your net taxes have increased 187%. That's why more and more citizens are saying enough is enough. Last month, on December the 2nd, I went to the courthouse steps. There were 21 people, properties that went into foreclosure. 21 citizens. These are the people that fund the school system. And if we continue to have these types of rate of foreclosures, and we also had 5 properties that went to tax sale for December, more and more people are not going to be able to afford to live in Rockdale County. And the 3 entities, or as I would say from my farming background, the 3 silos are going to have to start sitting down at the table and saying, what is your proposed budget? What is the city? What is the Board of Education? What is the county? Because we simply cannot afford these types of tax increases as we go forward, and budget increases.
Oh, I mean, George, I agree. I mean, it's and that's why, and you and I've talked about this many a time, right?
Yes, sir.
That's why the legislature introduced House Bill 581 originally, and because there is a property tax assessment crisis in the state of Georgia, and not only in the state of Georgia, but in the United States of America.
Yes,
And
sir.
the entities, government entities, Board of Educations, city municipalities, and counties have overvalued properties so that they can increase their coffers. And that's, you can't say it any lighter than that. That's exactly what's been going on, right? You've had these government entities over evaluating properties to increase the coffers to so they can increase spending, and that's exactly what's happened, right? So I mean, you can't say it any bigger than what it is. I mean, that's what's happened. And I do want to say, Alex, I want to let you know I sent you a link in case at some point you would like to come on and discuss about the article that you wrote, there's 3 series article about the letter. The citizens actually picked up that story, and it's very apparent they picked up that story from your 3 series article that you wrote. So if you would like to join us at some point, just let me know, and we'll be glad to entertain you. But I did send you a link in case you wanted to. But George, I mean, I 100% agree. You and I've talked about this, and then you actually sent me an email and shared with me budget increases that the board has incurred since 2019 to date, and those increases are phenomenal. Correct?
Well, and there's certainly no doubt. And going back to your point about the legislative side, is this information wouldn't have, the legislature would not have introduced this House bill if they had not been hearing from constituents, not only in this county, but all over the state, saying, look, we've got to put a cap on these taxes so we can look at our budgets, our personal budgets year after year, and see if we can afford it or do we need to move. And it was certainly passed, by Rockdale County taxpayers and taxpayers across the state. So I am glad that the legislative folks, put this to a vote, and now it's law. And then when we start to look at opt-out situations here, which we can go into in a minute, remember this item is for a tax shift away from the homesteaders, which we have 19,557 homestead properties as of April of 23 in this county, out of 33,403. 58% of us own our homes. So you're looking at a tax shift from the homesteaders, which are the people that invested in their counties, and shift it towards the investors and the renters, which I'm also a real estate investor in Georgia, and shift it also to the businesses, which we provide when you shop the rock, as we say, we do provide back to their coffers throughout the year.
You're Georgia, and you can't go. I mean, and that's exactly what House Bill 581 does. It creates a tax shift. If you're going to give one group of individuals a tax break, we all know someone is going to have to pick that burden up. And
Correct.
and the legislature totally anticipated that being shifted to investment property and to businesses to be able to give the homeowners a break, and specifically senior citizens. Georgian, do you want to go into, because I know you have been very diligent when you present to the board and you talk about, and because we do have a heavy senior population in Rockdale County, and you have talked about the senior citizens of Rockdale County and their Social Security increase versus the tax increase over a 6-year cycle. Would you talk to our audience about that with the information that you and your organization out of the taxpayer have collected regarding Social Security recipients increases versus tax increases over the last 6 years?
Well, and any of this information that we're talking about, Larry, I do have charts and graphs to back up all of this information. And if anybody needs this information emailed to them,
go ahead and type your email out there in the chat, George.
All right, if I can figure this one out, I will. But yeah, over the last 6 years, from 2018 through 2023, if you look at city, county, and school board net tax increases off their digest, 187%, while Social Security net tax increase is only going up 23%. And what the federal government is getting ready to do for 2025, we're going to get a whopping 2.5% increase, which is the lowest in 5 years. When you look at Rockdale County and you look at either AARP, which when you get my age, you'll be able to look at our AARP information, or I can send it to you. The largest growing sector in Rockdale County is 55 and over. And, many people that is the only income they have. And they had bought their home many years ago. These taxes continue to increase. That's why these properties are going to the courthouse steps. It's reality. When you look at, 1 in 10 Georgians right now, let's just look at some raw facts. 1 in 10 Georgians, or 1 million citizens today, are faced with food insecurity every 24 hours. The average credit card debt in any of the age groups from 18 all the way through senior citizens has increased continuously through 2012. My question would be this. I go to a lot of these meetings and people say, man, you're all over the place. Well, when you get pre-retired like me, it gives you a little opportunity to do these things. I very seldom see a Board of Education member go to a city council meeting or to a Board of Commissioners meeting. Now, there is one lady on the board that does come to the Board of Commissioner and the city meetings. So my question would be is if these board members are making decisions on the behalf of citizens, wouldn't they want to know what the city and the county is planning to do as far as tax increases? And to find out what are the new things that the county or city are planning to do to either reduce taxation, shift taxation. So again, as much as you can, please come to these meetings. Let your voice be heard. That's why they provide 3 minutes of public comment.
George, what email do you want people to reach out
Yeah,
to you? I'll type it in here for
yeah,
you.
if you would please. GEO check CHECK 57 at gmail.com. If you look at the largest increase, and this is according to AARP, that 55 and over citizens are faced with is healthcare increases. That's the largest percentage of their monies that they're having to look at as far as increases. Yes, I know they might have mortgages and such, but just looking at some raw facts, let's talk about food costs. From July of 20 through July of 24, there's been a 91% increase in food costs. Lettuce, chicken tenders, mozzarella sticks, blue cheese dressing, fryer oil, chicken wings, cranberry juice, trash can liners, butter. I mean, these are staples. And again, when you look at items, do you pay your mortgage first? Do you pay your taxes? Do you go into delinquency? Many of these senior citizens are faced with these very hard decisions. And what's also happening is that now 33% of citizens across the United States, or excuse me, 33%, or 80 million Americans are taking care of elders and children in the same household, which is also another shift that we're seeing, because if you can't afford this one house, you might have to move into your grandparents' home, your children's home, to save these dollars so you may not have to move out of the county. 11.4%, or 10,500 citizens of the 92,000 as of 2022 in Rockdale County live below the poverty line. I mean, so we have to look at these raw facts when these board members are going to make a decision for 19,557 citizens or homesteaders in this county. And so is their legacy one of sustainability, cost reduction, or are they going to opt out? And you know what, Larry, if this board opts out, or any board opts out, you're not solving any issues at all. You're just kicking the bucket down the road, plain and simple. Would you agree?
I would think you're intensifying an issue.
Yeah.
That would be my analysis. And George, and you see I put your email up here,
Yes,
geocheck57 at gmail.com. So anybody who would like some of the information that George has to provide with the statistics, email George and he will send you a copy of that information. And just to let you know, George, at some point, Alex said he was going to join us this evening.
Okay,
so he was getting some things set up. So when he comes on, I'll do that. Whatever. But I did want to go look at something Charlotte said a minute ago too, because it's something you brought up to me the other day, George. So let's like 21 parcels sold for non-payment of property taxes, in addition to mortgage companies foreclosing. And you mentioned that to me the other day.
All right. Well, let me clarify that. There were 21 parcels that went into foreclosure, which is different from tax sale. There were 5 additional properties that went to the courthouse steps for non-payment of taxes. Now, certainly Tisha Smart Washington can meet with those citizens and see if something can be worked out on a payment plan for those 5 properties. But when a property goes to foreclosure, it is sold to the highest bidder at the courthouse steps. It's just Georgia is a non-judicial foreclosure entity, and when it goes to the steps, it goes to the steps, and somebody will buy that property, whoever the highest bidder is.
George, Alex just joined us. Alex, welcome to the show. I thought you may want to come on tonight, since you did a great job here over the last week and a half with your 3-part series. And I noticed the Rockdale Citizen picked up your series. And then, but let's, if you would like to, say something about that or anything we've been talking about so far.
You called me this morning to say that the Citizen had picked it up. And I knew what the answer was going to be, but I said, did they attribute it to the original? And you hadn't read the article at the time. Now we've obviously seen the article, and Corliss, I think, sent it out to people as well. And of course, they didn't credit the original. But that's not how media works these days, is it? Right? Whenever you go online, you see a story. Everybody's reporting the story. Nobody attributes the original. So whatever, it is what it is. Right. Again, I don't do it for money. I don't do it for clicks. I would have monetized the channel a long time ago if that were the case. But it's an ethical issue, I think. You should, because unless the citizen did their own Open Records Act request and got the documents, which many of them were heavily redacted. I haven't shown anybody that yet. I may publish some of the very heavily redacted documents that they sent, Larry. But
just to let you know, the Open Records request was shared with me also, and I did see the redaction and the redacted things, and I found that very interesting. Right.
So I thought it was interesting that it would, again, without, it's redacted, so I don't know really what the data is. But if you read it, you can gather from the context that what they've redacted is actually school performance data. And I'll post all this so that people will be able to see it. But I think you'll come to the same conclusion I did, that they've actually redacted and hidden the Rockdale County Public Schools performance data, so that nobody gets the true data.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, I mean, I tell you, Al, I agree with, it's crazy, right? But, you can look at it this way, right? So I don't think any article that you do or any story that I do needs validated, right?
Right.
You and I do an excellent job on vetting our stories and vetting our sources before we go public with anything we say.
Right.
So, but it does show that when you've got a mainstream media actually duplicating our work, or your work in particular here, it actually validates in some way what we do in the community.
Yeah. And this is, I think this is just an important issue to people. The fact that listen, our public schools are not the best. I think I think the superintendent would even agree with us that our public schools aren't the best. And when you want to, I was going to say, when you want to be rewarded for that failure, it's not even asking to be rewarded for failure. It's asking to be compensated because of the failure. Because the only reason to be released without cause, in my mind, the only reason really is just a failure of the schools. And he wants this golden parachute because the schools have failed under his tenure.
I want to ask George a question, because George is, you and I look at this stuff sometimes a little differently than other people, Al, because we do research on it and we've followed things here for years, right? George, what was your take when you first learned? You first saw Alex's 3-piece series regarding the Open Records request and the contract negotiation, and then also the Citizen article. As a citizen and a taxpayer, how did you feel, George, when you read what the superintendent was requesting of the board?
Well, and first of all, Alex, thank you for bringing that to everybody's forefront. I think it takes, the guy above didn't put us here to be ordinary, but to be extraordinary. And I think everybody on this call tonight are extraordinary people, because we're providing truthful information. And yes, I've had several phone calls, and people were saying, why is he even writing an article or writing a information back to the board to reconsider his contract? Well, a contract is a contract, and when it's finalized, it's finalized. I've had employees over the years go, okay, that's the best we can do. That's the best we can do. And then that's the end of the conversation. Why bring it up again? I don't understand. Uh, and secondly, this kind of information has to go to the taxpayer because it's the old scenario. People are down on what they're not up on. So we have to bring factual information like you and Alex, myself, and other folks that have been on your show and people that do research, Charlotte and Tina and all these other folks that are visiting. We're out here in a dogfight. I mean, it's just plain and simple. When you have a recipient of Social Security only, they have to look at their budget year after year after year and say, how am I going to afford to live wherever it is in the United States? And from time to time, people do have to move because they have been taxed out of their homestead, which they've invested in for many, many years. And these foreclosures aren't on $1.2 million homes. They're not, some are 500,000, but many of them are in the $150,000 to $250,000 range. And the average person has been invested in these homes for 9 years in Rockdale County. And now their home's going to the foreclosures, going to the courthouse steps. I know they got to be feeling bad, but that's the truth.
Well, George and I looked at some data a minute ago, Alex, and we looked at some budget, 5-year budget history from the Board of Education.
Mhm.
Yeah, the 2019 to 2020 budget was $163 million. I'm rounding it, right? And the 2024-2025 budget was 221. That's a difference of $58 million in that time period, which is a significant increase. Would you agree that's a significant
Massive
increase,
increase.
Alex?
It's a
So,
massive increase.
Massive
I mean,
increase.
that's equivalent to the Board of Commissioners budget before Oz Nesbitt took office.
And you go back and look prior to that, and there's increases, but they're small marginal increases, right? and you see these average 7 to 8% increase every single year. And when they increase that percent every year, and you get over a 6-year cycle, that's how you end up with a $58 million increase. And it's hard to keep up with that when we talk about Rockdale County and how it's made up of majority residential. It's hard for a residential community to keep up with that kind of budget increase and not to expect people to lose homes. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think it's ridiculous. I mean, my question is, what did we get for that $53 million?
58.
$58 million, sorry. What improvements did we see in the quality of education for that money? Well, we know we didn't see any. This school system has been on a downward slope now for, I mean, over a decade at this point, isn't it, Larry?
Yes.
I think we started tracking this data, maybe a decade's worth of data, and it's been a downward spiral. Now, the Governor's Office of Student Achievement they don't grade schools anymore, but the last time they did, we were a D-rated school system. I hate to think what we would be today if that office was still grading the school system the same way, because we haven't improved.
I think the data shows,
Yeah,
and would
and
agree with you.
yeah, and it's horrific that people are losing their homes over a failing school system. I think it's a travesty. And somebody needs to be held accountable. Somebody has to be accountable. Generally, the person accountable is the person at the top. And in the case of this school system, that's the superintendent.
I don't know if you did get a chance to read the article, right?
Yeah, well, I read the article that Corliss sent.
Yeah, so you
Which
read
is
it,
which was it was the whole thing, I
it's
believe.
the whole article. Yeah, and before you came on the show, George had asked me about being specifically named and the actual quote that was in there about how how I felt about that quote being attributed, and to my thought process with it. And did you hear my explanation
I did.
of that? So,
So
and that's what I find interesting, that and I maybe understand why the superintendent did what he did and quoted it as board member elect and all this such and all that, and you know find it interesting. But and as I explained, as board member elect, I have not talked about that position or what
right.
I would do or
Even,
wouldn't do.
even this evening, I'm the one saying it, not you. You haven't said anything. You haven't agreed with me. You haven't disagreed with me. I'm the one that said it's the person at the top that needs to be held responsible.
And that's why I'm saying I want to make this clear now. Even with this conversation going on this show, I have remained neutral. Correct?
Right. Right.
So and then that's what I want the people to know. I want everybody out there to know that I don't agree with what the article says. I don't agree with the quote. I don't agree with what the superintendent has said, because board member elect Larry Cox has not continuously harassed or threatened or made him feel uncomfortable. Now, candidate Cox may have, and podcaster Cox sure in the hell did.
No,
But
I disagree with that. Podcaster Cox and candidate Cox did not harass nor threaten.
no, I spoke candidly.
We discussed data,
Yes.
and you can't argue with the data. As difficult as it is to get the data, as is evidenced by the heavily redacted documents they sent out, they don't really want anybody having the data. But that's what you did. That's what you and I did. We discussed the data performance, and the fact that the performance has been, well, decidedly lacking.
And what concerns me even more is where I was going to go, is defining what that I had done in those other two capacities as that, when it was nothing more than me exercising my constitutional rights of free speech.
Mhm.
And if and I have to strongly disagree with the assessment that he portrayed me in that original letter. I believe it was to Miss Brown.
Right, but it makes no difference anyway. First of all, you said yourself about the case law regarding candidates and their speech, but it's not just that. There's all the case law regarding public officials and them being accountable. The fact that they can't block people from their social media pages because the people have an absolute right to express their opinions, their frustrations, and their beliefs to these people. He may not like that. And if that's the case, that's just another reason to get the hell out of the job. Do yourself a favor and resign if you don't like being scrutinized for your performance. That's part and parcel of being a civil servant. That's part and parcel of working for the taxpayers. He doesn't see it that way. He doesn't consider himself a servant of the public by any means. And that's evidenced by his not so thinly veiled threats to the board to seek any and all remedies, any and all remedies available to him. We all know what that means. That means he's going to sue them.
I'm going to put a comment up here that Ms. Turner put on the show. I'm not going to comment on it, but I would like for you and George to comment on Corliss's comment.
That's exactly what he's doing. He's trying to lay the ground, but he has no claim. He agreed to his contract, and if he disagreed with his contract, he shouldn't have signed it.
George, what do you think about the comment Ms. Turner has made here?
I mean, any time, and you have to pick your words carefully, and you have to ensure you are correct in what you're saying. But anytime you bring up somebody else in a conversation that's written, yes, there is scrutiny there that can be taken into a legal context, no doubt. Let me just bring up a couple of items before my 29-year-old brain loses track here. And I know that there have been certain state mandated expenses regarding benefits and insurance categories for employees of the school systems. I understand. But I've cut my budget 18%. 18%. I had to look at areas saying, okay, I don't need this. When I was with American Honda Motor Company for 30 years, between 2007 and 2010, we didn't receive a pay increase. The CFO went, no, we're in a dogfight right now. We used to be able to drive whatever kind of vehicles we wanted to our dealer meetings. Everybody went into a Civic. We saved over $5 million in 3 years, in 5 years, excuse me. We worked with 1/3 the field staff that Chevrolet, Ford, and Chrysler worked with. We funded our retirement account. It was always at least 105%. I know the board of commissioners was at 78% several years ago. I don't know where it is today, but that would be one area to look at. But you're looking at solutions. 3 years ago, I brought to the board of commissioners, I was saying, you have 68 Ford F-150s in your fleet. Reduce it by 50% and get into the enterprise lease management program. The county's going to save over $1 million in 7 years by doing that. Now, they've already reduced their F-150 by 17%. They got a long way to go. But, there's going to have to be some serious.
George, let me just back up a second. Did you say they had 68
They had
F-150?
68 Ford F-150s. I said, reduce it by 50% and put those folks into Ford EcoSports. Just 50%. $1 million in 5 years. And you know what? They accepted my proposition and put it into effect. But I'm just a citizen over here. You would think that these people that are controlling budgets and the livelihoods of citizens would look at cost saving benefits. What if we were to have a program called Caught You Doing It Right, and employees from the city and the county and the Board of Education could come and say, you know what, here's a way to save money, and provide them a little gift for doing it, for bringing that idea up. But I've never seen any cost saving ideas coming from anybody, from directors or principals or anything else. I don't know.
No,
Well,
yeah,
yeah,
you made a good point
Okay.
about that.
One other item. Let's talk about CARES, this ARPA fund stuff. Now, I've got one email here from an ORR, and Larry, I know you have additional numbers, but there is over $1.2 million that was paid through CARES funds that is now in the budget. So, let's face it, taxpayers had to pay for the CARES. There is no free lunch here, but 1.2 million. And now the taxpayer, it's in our budget or the school system budget. So the CARES fund money is run out.
There's another 1.3 million also, George.
You've got another so we're looking at $2.5 million.
Yes.
So my question would be, why? Was that a good financial decision to make?
Well, they were told up front, don't use this money for any recurring expenses. And that's the first thing they do is turn around and use it on payrolls and recurring expenses.
Well, and I think you can tell when you look at the budget increase from 20 to 25. That's basically that 19 to 20 and 2024 to 25. That's that $58 million, right? There's where they got that balloon of COVID monies, and they started infusing their budget with that, and that's what happened. But that's not only unique to Rockdale County. That happened all throughout America with Board of Educations and municipalities and counties all over America. they got that infusion of CARES and ARPA capital, and they spent it the way they were told not to, and put it on reoccurring things, and then had to hit their M&Os with it, and now they're all facing budget crises, and that coincides with this assessed value crisis we're having in America right now, right? All this goes together when you look at it. It's not hard to figure out. They got a bunch of federal money. They didn't spend it the way they were supposed to. They got hooked on it like a crackhead does crack, and now they can't. Now they up Georgia. I know that's true, right? They got hooked on that money like a crackhead does crack.
And we've got if anybody wants to see this ORR, I have it here. I can email it to them. But again, a question would be, of these people that are putting together these separate budgets for their separate departments. I mean, it sounds like the board is now going to get more involved instead of just waiting for 2 weeks prior to the budget being approved, that the new board will now say, we need to be involved in this budgetary process for many, many months before it's approved. I would have to say, I hope that happens, Larry.
Yeah. And Alex, I want to put something else up here too, right? Look at,
Corliss,
put that up there if you want to discuss that for a minute.
I want to point out that everything comes first full circle, right? George mentioned that during the financial crisis they took pay cuts. So did we. My entire firm, we had to take substantial pay cuts. It's the position that these municipalities are going to be in once this bubble bursts and this gravy train comes to an end. They've already lost the CARES money. Well, they're in a position right now where they can make up for that through the current home values, right? But that gravy train is, I'm assuming you can still hear me?
Still hear you, yes.
Okay. But that gravy train's going to be coming to an end, Larry, when this bubble bursts and how home values go back to their, I'm going to say, reasonable market levels. What are these municipalities going to do then? They're going to have no choice but to make cuts. There is going to be no making up for that kind of shortfall.
And that's where I think we need to be preemptive, go ahead and start making cuts now and get back to a reasonable budgetary status right now. Don't wait for the crisis to occur. Let's go ahead and do the smart thing right now, adjust spending habits and do the right thing now before you're forced to. And then that way you don't have that crisis. I mean, it's still going to be difficult, but you won't have that magnitude of a crisis that you're facing.
Right. All right, fellas, listen, I'm not at home, as you can you don't have my camera at the moment. I'm not at home, as you can probably tell. I'm on the road, so I'm going to jump off of here, let you guys finish up. But yeah, I appreciate it, Larry. Thanks, George.
No problem, man. Appreciate it, Al. Talk to you
later. Take care, guys.
See you, Al. Larry, I'm going to provide a couple of other points here. Good buddy of mine always says, and this is looking at people around Atlanta and people throughout the state of the United States. He says, people drive their paychecks around 285, and it's quite interesting because if you look right now in 2024, there's going to be 1.6 million vehicles repossessed in the United States on a 72-month payment. The average car payment right now is $762. If you look at by between 26 and 2029, 1.8 million vehicles will be repossessed. So, individuals are having to now rebudget themselves and look at their priorities. But also remember this, 33% of working Americans have a side hustle to afford reasonable living costs. 33%. That's 3 out of 10 Americans. I mean, so I believe everybody's going to have to readjust, and I will have to say that if this board opts out they are only going to exacerbate the situation that citizens in Rockdale County and throughout the state are faced with. Plain and simple.
Well, I mean, I think, I mean, I don't think I know, right? I mean, so um, board member Justin Kinney mentioned the other day, he said, you know, if we decide to opt out, why wouldn't you think that our local delegation would take action to help the taxpayers? And I'll tell you what the superintendent called hypothetical. I'm just going to tell you, it's not hypothetical. I've spoken to members of our local delegation, and if the board opts out of 581, and I hope there are other board members listening, and I hope that, you know, if you're not listening, somebody will tell you, or you go and watch this as I say this. Listen to these words. That wasn't hypothetical. If the board votes to opt out of 581, legislation will be introduced to cut the millage rate down to the state cap of 20%. I mean, that's just the action that our local delegation feels they're going to need to take. If this board ignores the will of the voters, then the local delegation is willing to have the voters' backs and give them a bit of a say in what happens. So just saying that was not a hypothetical, guys. That was reality. If you opt out, our local delegation is going to do something to protect the taxpayers of Rockdale County. If you act irresponsibly, that will be the strongest language that I say about it until I'm on the board, George.
Well, I have the same information because, you know, I'm at the Capitol probably once a month, maybe sometimes twice a month for other activities, but it's vitally important. And if you don't have it, we can certainly get you the emails. But if you don't, if a citizen needs information regarding Rhonda Taylor, our representative here that lives in Rockdale County, you've got Angela Moore, who has part of DeKalb in Rockdale. You've got Tanya Anderson, our senator. You have these individuals, you know, you can send them an email. The more emails they get, the more they'll go, you know what, this is an issue. We need to take action on it. And that's what happened with this Rockdale Coalition. And moving forward with 581, along with other legislators across the state, and said we need to provide solutions to this issue.
Well, let's be clear about something, George. The reason you have a new post one commissioner and a new chairman is exactly this kind of issue.
I would agree with you.
But because of not listening to taxpayers whenever these kind of issues would come up, right? So that's just plain and simple, right?
Yes.
Plain and simple. You know, I proposed when I ran for office to reduce the board budget by 5%, right? You and I have run some numbers similarly, and you see my 5% makes sense. Correct, George?
Yeah, I'm, you know, and I'm going to certainly bring this to the board's attention when I speak on the 9th and the 16th, is that there needs to be a 5% reduction, which would be a little over $11 million.
It would take that budget down from that 221, almost 222, right down to $211 million.
That is correct.
And that would put, and we would actually, at the same mill that we have this year, if you don't, you know, if you take the rollback or whatever, you know, somewhere in between the rollback and where it is now, you would be able to raise enough money to, we would be able to have enough revenue to actually fund that budget and have enough money to be able to put back some for the funds balance, for savings. Because right now you can see the board last year this time had like $11 million in savings, and this year they had like, right now I think it's, what was it, $4.5 million after the influx. But last month it was negative, right at $300,000, right? when
Right.
they had taken the tan out, right? So the board has got to start putting some money back. The
Yeah.
board, because if they continue their same spending trends, they will not be able to, the board will not be able to balance the budget with the revenues on hand and with anticipated tax revenue and anticipated state funding. So, and that's a problem because state law doesn't permit that. You can't not balance the budget, right? So it
Correct.
would require cuts at that point if they don't have the revenue and a funds balance to balance the budget. And I think it's time to get ahead of it. You do the 5% cut, you take that budget down to $211 million, and go from there. And then we see the next year if we need to cut again or what we need to do to maintain a solid economic status for the Board of Education. That's what I intend to recommend and offer as a solution when I'm on the board, is these cuts and looking at the spending.
Well, and Larry, I would, I would certainly agree with you. Looking at the state of Georgia, and people can say this is right, wrong, or indifferent. And yes, we have paid in state taxes, there's sales taxes, there's all kind of items. But the state of Georgia right now is holding a $16.5 billion surplus. They know that things have to be readjusted. Why do you think they've got $16.5 billion sitting in reserve? Because they're probably going to have to make some decisions to utilize some of those monies in an effective and efficient manner. And you can sit and talk with Blake Tillery, head of appropriations, and he'll tell you, we have to be conservative because that's where we're hitting into this realm of conservation and not being able to spend money willy-nilly and getting all these federal funds that are now utilized. Now they have to go over to the general budget to be funded. So
I just want to answer something that Ms. Russo put up, George. She says, I think the elderly will never see any tax cuts in our county. If the city, the county, and the Board of Education honor the decision that the taxpayers, the voters did this pay in November, and they honor their decision and don't opt out of 581, senior citizens will see tax relief next year. And that's reality. We've seen the numbers. We've seen what 581 will do for senior citizens. You've seen those statistics, haven't you, George?
certainly,
If these three silos or three entities do the right thing and abide by the will of the voters of Rockdale County, the elderly in Rockdale County will see tax relief next year. But if they don't, then you're right, Ms. Russo, they won't. That you're accurate.
one thing that I was looking at some of the pieces of information here. Somebody mentioned zero-based budgeting. I know for a fact that, and I saw it during a meeting that I had with a couple of school board employees, there is a PowerPoint presentation that has been printed out, and I know that zero-based budgeting is being reviewed and discussed with people.
They have been instructed to use zero-based budgeting.
Yeah. So again, we've been bringing that information up to the board over time, and I guess they finally said this would be something good to utilize, and they took our suggestion.
I know. We'll see. Well, George, I'm gonna go ahead and let you go this evening. I'm gonna let me go this evening. I'm gonna tell everybody thank you for joining us because we went over a little bit. But guys, I want to thank you for joining us tonight on this rendition and version of Speak Your Mind with Larry Cox. Like I say, speak your mind and let your voice be heard. George, you got any closing comments for our good citizens?
I'll just give you three. People, with my background, people ask you 3 questions. They don't care where you're from, what your shoe size is, how good looking or bad looking you are. There's 3 simple questions. Can I trust you? Are you committed to excellence? And do you like me as a friend? The way you answer those is you do your best, do what's right, and treat the person with mutual respect. And I think that's what all of us are headed towards. And if you don't go after what you want, you'll never have it. If you do not ask, the answer is always no. And if you do not step forward, Larry, like a lot of us are, you're always going to be in the same place. Pretty simple. So get out, get to the meetings, speak up. If you don't want to speak, get in touch with me. I'll take your 3 minutes and I'll speak on your behalf regarding whatever might be truthful.
I'm putting something out here.
All right.
So Ms. Russo asked, when was the next Board of Education meeting? January the 9th. January the 9th is the next Board of Education meeting, and that will be the meeting where I actually will be the first night that I sit on the board. So come out January 9th, watch me get sworn in January 9th, and come out and support me and the rest of the board. But I'd really like to see you guys that actually supported me and helped me win the election. I'd like to share that night with you, because my victory in swearing in is as much as a victory for you as it is me. So I would really love to see a good outpouring of support that night from you guys. And like I said, I really appreciate the support that you gave me, and I intend to return that with representing this community to the best of my ability. So George, thank you for coming on the show tonight. I think we had a good conversation. I think the citizens have learned a lot tonight, and I think that we keep doing these kind of shows. We keep putting this kind of information out, and people will have a better understanding of what's going on in Rockdale County, our little corner of the world that means so much to each and every one of us. So, guys, again, George, just hang on here. When I end the show, I mean, you'll be in the waiting room. But guys, thank you for joining us tonight. And again, join me next week on Speak Your Mind with Larry Cox, and let your voice be heard.